Let's talk about him.
You know, you talk about avoiding the hot seat. Rich, he's on the hot seat, and he's been there at different levels of warmth since 2019.
Apparently, the greatest head coach in NFL history is now on the hot seat. Bill Belichick and his legacy has gotten complicated over the past few years, and it's frustrating as a fan of his to see, and to say the least. You could say I'm a little bit biased. I've made it pretty obvious I'm a massive Bill Belichick fan, and I've got the Belichick books with me. I've got a book about all of his quotes and comments, and even got, his father's book, one of the greatest football books of all time, Football Scouting Methods. Check it out if you haven't. I mean, I love Tom Brady, but I've always been Team Belichick. Now, I have a reason for that. When I was a kid, I went to Patriots training camp. He signed my football. And, when that happened, it blew my mind. It was pretty cool as a kid. And that was also a big factor into why I liked coaches so much. I can't explain it. Stuff happens when you're a kid and it just carries with you for the rest of your life. And that was one of those things that happened to me. And I wore a Belichick hoodie as a kid, had his initials on it. Listen, I love this guy. And I'm gonna stick up for him when people are hating on him. And I'm tired of sitting on the sideline and watching everybody just tarnish on his legacy that he's built over the past 2 decades as the head coach of the New England Patriots. Because as of recently, obviously with Tom Curran, he said that Bill Belichick's on the hot seat. And apparently there is some frustration between him and Robert Kraft. And people are questioning his legacy now, saying that without Brady, Belichick is nothing. He's never been anything. It's frustrating, and I'm tired of that. So I obviously really care a lot about Bill Belichick. Probably a little too much. And not just Bill Belichick, but Nick Saban, his legacy is apparently in question. I saw Paul Feinbaum talk about that.
Alabama does miss the playoffs again this year. Are we going to be talking about Nick Saban's legacy in a different light?
I think, yes, you have to.
It's really frustrating for me where 2 guys can, set their legacy, win multiple titles, just pass everybody in the sport, and then they just have, some average years, not some great years, which literally every single coach has, and apparently their legacy is now in question, and maybe they just weren't as good as they used to be. Maybe they were never good to begin with, which is just lunacy in my opinion. But this video's focus is obviously gonna be on Bill Belichick and not on Nick Saban, despite many similarities, but Belichick's legacy really began in question once Tom Brady left the Patriots. I constantly heard people my entire life tell me how Brady was only good because of Bill Belichick. The only reason he was good. He was a system quarterback. And then, Tom leaves and then has success, and Bill, he hovers around 500 exactly, I think. So he went 25-25 the past 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. So he's averaged literally at 500. And Tom Brady goes on to win a Super Bowl, has another decent year the next year, and then obviously his past season, the one retired after, they weren't very great, and especially on offense, they were never in sync. But, everything flipped, and now Bill Belichick was just carried by Tom Brady. And Tom Brady, he was fun in Tampa Bay, and people liked Tom Brady, and people came around to him, where Bill Belichick, he's really quiet with the media, comes across as a bit of a jerk sometimes. So I think that changed public perception about the guy, even though I spent my entire childhood defending Brady over Belichick, and now as an adult I've had to completely flip that and have to defend Belichick, and I'm going to provide you some good reasons why. He's 19 wins away from becoming the all-time winningest head coach in NFL history, and the guy that he would pass would be Don Shula. And Don Shula never went to more than 1 Super Bowl with Dan Marino. He had that undefeated season obviously, but Belichick very well could have had one as well. They didn't complete the job, so I'm not gonna sit there and claim that, but plenty of other head coaches in the NFL's history have had bad seasons. Now, Andy Reid is another guy that has, surpassed Bill Belichick as the best head coach in the NFL, but I remember not too long ago where everybody would criticize Andy Reid for his game clock management, never being able to deliver as a head coach. I think he had only made 1 Super Bowl before he got Mahomes, which, he lost to Belichick. And then even other guys like Bill Walsh or Vince Lombardi, who I would consider, top 5 head coaches in NFL history, very obviously. But those guys only coached for 1 decade. And Bill Belichick, he's gone 2 decades plus as a head coach of an NFL team. And that's not even looking at the Cleveland years, a day in New York, and his years as a defensive coordinator for the Giants when their defenses were great under Bill Parcells. But once Brady left and he went down to Tampa Bay, Belichick, he's just been average. And as a Patriots fan, the seasons have been very frustrating as a fan to watch. They've been good. They just haven't been bad enough to be, worthy of real criticism, but they haven't been great enough or made the playoffs enough, in my opinion, which has given people reason to criticize him, which I completely understand as a fan of the team. I think that this past season was incredibly frustrating frustrating to watch. I thought that they were still really good on defense, but it was just the offense and, whole Joe Judge, Matt Patricia running the offense. So I'm excited for this season with Bill O'Brien coming in. I think that they're going to fix a lot of things, but that's besides the point. I just think that if Bill Belichick was fired, I think that basically every single team in the NFL, besides maybe 2 or 3, would be lining up for him to be their head coach. And to just say the Patriots should fire him or get rid of him or he's past his prime, I just find that to be a complete joke because everybody would want him if he was on the open market. And then even Tom Curran was talking about how Gerard Mayo would potentially replace him. But again, why would you replace Bill Belichick, the greatest head coach in NFL history, with Gerard Mayo, a younger guy who basically comes from that exact same tree? I feel like if the Patriots were going to, switch off of Belichick, they would go with a completely different style and system and sticking with the, Belichick coaching tree, which again, his coaching tree hasn't been great. I'm not going to deny that. But I don't necessarily think that's what marks a great head coach to begin with. That's what makes him stand out, is the fact that a lot of his successors go on to other places and they can't succeed because Bill has that special ingredient that makes him Belichick to begin with, and it's just not easy to copy that. And he's really like an old school guy that sticks out in the new NFL, where we're seeing a lot of what people call subcontracting head coaches, where they just specialize in an offense or specialize in a specific category rather than just being a great overall head coach. And not even just the coaching aspect. I believe the roster management and team construction that he's done as basically the GM of the team, even though people love to make fun of his draft picks. But 6 Super Bowls says otherwise, and Belichick always finds a way to get things done. He's always moving on from a guy too early rather than too late. He really kind of revolutionized that whole concept. Again, his impact as a GM, I really don't care what anybody says. I still believe he's the best in the NFL. Again, he drafted Tom Brady and he kept him. You could say you lucked into Tom Brady, but you don't luck into keeping Tom Brady on your roster. I think they had 4 quarterbacks back in like the 2000s. They kept Tom Brady as a rookie. He knew what he was looking at. He knew he had something. I just don't understand why people don't give him props for that. It is what it is. I just wish that legacies were something that, stood intact. I understand with new data and information and, being able to see somebody coach past what you could say their prime. I get that that could affect like your perception of them, but I think that Bill Belichick, my guys, him and Nick Saban are the 2 greatest coaches in college football and NFL history. And it's okay to have some, not great seasons. It's not like they're having terrible seasons. It's not like they're just making complete embarrassments of themselves. I think that they just get criticized a little bit differently because of the success they've had. And, not a lot of people like that success because when one team wins for so long, it can get pretty frustrating as fans of opposite teams. I completely understand where fans come from for that. But I think that legacies are something that, they should stay in stone. Maybe he should have retired in 2019 when they won that final Super Bowl. Imagine if he did retire like then, things would just be completely different. I don't think that him coaching past Brady should be a knock on his legacy at all. He's continued working, he's continued coaching, he's continued trying to make football players better. I don't really understand how you could criticize somebody for that, especially when plenty of other head coaches that many consider all-time greats have had plenty of bad seasons, especially past their dynasties. I just hate the idea that people should retire and, protect their legacy that they've built rather than keep playing and potentially expose that. I don't really think they're exposing anything. Everybody has a certain period of domination over anything that they do. Nobody's going to be tip top of the sport or the profession for the rest of their entire career. And I don't think that Belichick still coaching right now and only hovering around 500 makes him bad at all. The guy's 19 wins away from becoming the all-time winningest coach in NFL history. He's got 6 Super Bowls as a head coach. I think 9 as just a coach in general. What else does he have left to prove? And I also don't believe that he has anything to lose. He's continued working. I feel like people should respect the fact that he's continued working and coaching. He could easily retire tomorrow and maybe people wouldn't have this perception of him. I just get frustrated when perceptions change of people, when their legacies should already be cemented, especially when they're not doing anything criminal or malicious, which he's not. He's still coaching football. I think people forget how great of a scout he is. This guy lives and breathes football. He's a true football guy. I just get so frustrated. Anyway, I'm not gonna keep dragging this on. I just wish people would understand that it takes a great head coach to mold great players, and I think it takes great players to mold a great head coach. Brady-Belichick dynamic was something that they both needed each other, and obviously they did, because what people just continue to overlook was the fact that Tom Brady went down to Tampa Bay. He went with Bruce Arians, and Bruce Arians coached him hard, which I don't necessarily think that Tom wanted at first, but then he realized he kind of needed, because Bruce left. That offense in complete dysfunction. Things were not great for them. They didn't really have the structure or discipline that he would have had in New England, that after, playing for 20 seasons as a quarterback, I think that he really needed that. And I think that that's kind of what accelerated his retirement. I really do believe he could have kept playing, but I just don't think he had the structure to help him. And I felt like Tom Brady was really missing that system that he needed, which again, not bad to need a system. Every great player needs a system, especially in the sport of football. Football is the sport you need a system. There's a reason why Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are such a great match. match because Andy Reid knows how to push the right buttons to elevate his play. It's the same with Brady and Belichick. They needed each other. There's a reason it worked for 2 decades. Things don't work for 2 decades like that. Probably not going to see something like that again, especially under those circumstances. I just wish people wouldn't be so critical. That's all. So yeah, there you go, guys. Those are my comments on the Belichick situation. I just find it incredibly laughable when people would question somebody's legacy like that. Guy that's been around the NFL for as long as he has, and he's progressed the game of football in ways that nobody else really has, besides maybe like a guy like Paul Brown. I mean, what Belichick has done over the past 2 decades, his legacy shouldn't be in question. And if you're a smart enough fan of the game of football, bias aside, not even have to be a Patriots fan, if you can just respect the NFL's history, it's pretty clear that Belichick is the greatest head coach in NFL history. And I think that his longevity really should prove that. So thank you guys for watching. That's going to do it. Now we'll see you in the next video. Peace.